And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
Well, President Joe Biden did an interview on Friday night with George Stephanopoulos of ABC News in an attempt to try and quash fears that he is not ready to be the candidate. And you can tell it didn't go so well because I'm here on a Saturday morning making this video. So before I even get to the clips here, I want to make it clear, this wasn't as bad as the debate. Few things could be as bad as his debate performance a week ago, but this didn't help to make anyone feel better. And, you know, the unfortunate part is that this wasn't bad enough to force people around him to push him out of the race, but it also wasn't good in the sense that it didn't make anyone feel good about the fact that he's the candidate, especially as his polling keeps declining. And the reason why this continues to be a discussion isn't just, you know, because of randos online. The Democratic Party, sitting Democratic politicians are now coming out to say he should not be the candidate. So these are insiders. These are big donors that are important to the Democratic Party. These are politicians. These are the people that are worried about not just the presidency, which of course is incredibly important, but also their own race, because how poorly Biden is doing right now is going to impact their ability to win their races. So before I even get to the first clip from this interview, I want to share this. This was a campaign stop he did shortly before the interview aired, and this didn't go too well either.
Let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020. 2020.
I will beat him again in 2020. Okay. Any of these as a one-off, you know, people make mistakes. I make mistakes doing these videos. But this is an ongoing problem where he forgets names, where he gets the year wrong. And it isn't even just about that, because even that is one thing. It's another thing if you can't coherently argue what your campaign is about, what you're fighting for. If you come off to people as somebody who is slowly deteriorating before our very eyes, that is a problem. So let's get to the first clip that I want to share here.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well,
Let's just stop there. Oh my God. I'm laughing because this is so uncomfortable and tragic. He doesn't even remember if he watched the debate. Okay. Unless he's trying to make a joke there where it's like, of course I didn't watch it because I was so terrible. But it doesn't appear he's trying to crack a joke. It just appears like he doesn't remember if he actually watched the debate back.
did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well, what I want to get at is what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, you know, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now, or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. The way the debate ran, not my fault, nobody else's fault. No one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night.
All right. That was largely incoherent. You can try and piece it together. I think he was trying to say he over-prepared like he does when he meets with world leaders. He was getting too into the details, and he wasn't focusing enough on the overall picture, and then Trump lied a bunch of times. Like there are pieces of thoughts there that, you know, I understand what he's trying to say, but he, again, is not able to coherently put that into an answer. Even with this, like George Stephanopoulos, there comes at the end saying, you even had an issue from the beginning of the debate, which was clear in the debate. From the first question, Biden was having a problem. It appears to be the same in this interview, where he's, from the first question, he is not really doing too well. Now, it's important to remind people what Joe Biden was in 2020. Because back in 2020, there were also fears that he's not as quick as he used to be. Yet, which is true compared to who Biden was, say, in 2012 or 2008. But watch him here. So compare what you just saw to this interview from 2020.
Nobody making less than $400,000 will pay a penny more in tax under my proposal.
That's a promise.
That's a guarantee, a promise. I give you my word as a Biden. That's an absolute guarantee.
And you think it's a good idea to raise taxes when the economy's in dire straits?
Depending who you're raising them on. Look, if you're raising somebody who's making $1 billion a year, it's not a problem if they pay 39.6%, which everybody should pay, raise another $90 billion. Nobody.
I almost forgot how much better he was 4 years ago. This is very clear what he's arguing here. Well spoken. He is not this man anymore. At some point you get to a certain age. The age is different for everybody, but you get to a certain age where things begin to rapidly decline. Biden is clearly now at that age. We see him now. Imagine him next year, the year after, the year after, the year after. Imagine the next 4 years. Even if he somehow manages to stay in the race and win the race, there is no way he can continue to actually be in this position. This has to be the worst response, even apart from how, incoherent he can be. This is just the worst answer to give to this question.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do.
Okay, before I even get to the overall answer here, did the goodest job that I believe I could do. Okay, but that isn't even the biggest problem with this answer. Let's go back.
How will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about. Look, George.
Is that what this is about? Running for the most powerful position in the world against somebody who you correctly identify as a threat. What matters is if I gave it my all. Like it's, baseball with a bunch of friends on a Saturday. How can you, this goes to this isn't even just a Joe Biden issue. This is an issue with a lot of politicians, especially politicians on a national level, where it is all about their egos. You are a public servant. For your mind to go immediately to, well, myself, as long as I tried, then it's all good, as opposed to what's going to happen to not just the country, but the rest of the world potentially if Trump gets back in. It's psychotic to think this way, to answer this question with this response.
Think of it this way. You've heard me say this before. I think the United States and the world is at an inflection point where the things that happen in the next several years are going to determine what the next 6-7 decades look like. And who's going to be able to hold NATO together like me? Who's going to be able to be in a position where I'm able to keep the Pacific Basin in a position where we're at least checkmating China now? Who's going to do that? Who has that reach? Who knows all these? We're going to have, I guess, a good way to judge me is you're going to have now the NATO conference here in the United States next week. Come listen. See what they say.
I alone can fix it. Remember when Donald Trump did this and he was rightly criticized? Joe Biden is doing the same thing. Who else can do this job? I know these people. I'm here. How about the guy you were the VP to, who was incredibly fresh in politics, and he became president, and he did the job? Most presidents that come in, guess what, weren't there before. And they learn. And there's a staff there that helps them, which, by the way, is, I have to assume, is the only way Biden is able to even to continue doing what he's doing at this point, is because he has a staff. There's no way he's doing this shit himself. Like, this is so insane to try and act like you are the only person that could do this. You are the only Democrat that could do this job. That has to be the worst answer. And a lot of people, correctly, including people within the Democratic Party, were criticizing that, or Democratic strategist operatives were openly criticizing how stupid of an answer that was. But Ryan Grimm here writing, if an 81-year-old doctor who struggled to complete sentences looked down at me on the operating table and said he didn't care if I lived or not, as long as he tried his hardest and did his best, I'm not sure that would be comforting. Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. All right, here's another one here. What will make him drop out?
If you can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump, will you stand down?
It depends unless the Lord Almighty comes down and tells me that, I might do that.
Well, I mean, on a more practical level, Washington Post just reported in the last hour that Senator Mark Warner is assembling a group of senators together to try and convince you to stand down because they don't think you can win.
Well, Mark is a good man. We've never had that. He also tried to get the nomination too. Mark and I have a different perspective. I respect him.
And if Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy...
Mark Warner, by the way, is the quintessential standard establishment Democrat. It's not like this is a guy challenging Biden for power, or is someone who is, to Biden's radical left or right. Mark Warner is just your standard Democratic politician. If he is helping to lead the charge to get you out, if he is worried, there's a problem. So this also goes to why I think it's important that Democrats that are politically aligned with Biden are the ones that are coming out first to do this. Because if it was, say, Bernie Sanders or AOC, there would be a criticism being, oh, look at these far left radicals trying to take down our president, Joe Biden. We can't trust them. But you can't use that excuse. These are people that are traditionally within Biden's circle, politically aligned with him. They're the ones leading the charge here. They're the ones coming out and saying, you cannot run, sir. Please step aside. We are going to lose with you at the top of the ticket.
Pelosi come down and say, we're worried that if you stay in the race, we're going to lose the House and the Senate. How will you respond?
I go into detail with them. I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race. Stay in the race. None of the people said I should leave.
But if they do?
Well, it's like, they're not going to do that.
You sure?
Well, yeah, sure. Look.
They already are coming out to say to say that they're not going to do that when they're already beginning to do that is, you're not in touch with reality, or at least willing to accept reality.
If the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'll get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down. I mean, these hypotheticals, George.
He might.
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been reported.
I've met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Hakeem. I had more time than that with Jim Clyburn. I spent time with many hours off and on the last little bit with Chuck Schumer. It's not like I had all the governors.
I agree that.
Who, met with him, and then reports came out saying they were concerned with how he acted on the call. The reason the governors all met with Biden after the debate is because they were concerned about his condition. They weren't going to meet in the very first meeting and say, you got to leave now. They wanted to meet to talk with him to see what's going on. And they're now more concerned after talking with him. Again, all of these reassurances are just not in touch with what is actually going on.
The Lord Almighty is not going to come down. But if you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
He is just unwilling to accept what is going on. David Axelrod here, a longtime Democratic operative. This is a guy who's been in Democratic Party politics for a while in high levels with Barack Obama, with Joe Biden. Here he is writing, the president is rightfully proud of his record, but he is dangerously out of touch with the concerns people have about his capacities moving forward and his standing in this race. 4 years ago at this time, he was 10 points ahead of Trump. Today, he is 6 points behind. And I showed there was a CNN graphic that I showed in a recent video showcasing all the former one-term presidents who were behind the polls and lost the first debate. They all ended up losing the race. Now, you could say, well, just because these presidents did terribly before in polling and in the debate, and they lost, doesn't mean Biden's going to. What aspect of Joe Biden gives you confidence is what I would question. Why would anybody think it would be any different for Joe Biden? It isn't as if he is, uniquely equipped to win this race. If anything, he is even worse than those other candidates. Not if anything, he definitely is worse than those other candidates were at this point in the race. And again, they lost. Another clip here.
I'm asking you is about your personal situation. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months?
Can I run the 110 flat? No. But I'm still in good shape.
Are you more frail?
No.
Come on, man. Of course you're more frail. I'm more frail than I was a year ago. Everybody ages. You are now at a point where you are obviously more frail. And saying that is, again, either in denial or he is lying.
I know you
Don't
spoke.
keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted." I said, "Look, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. They don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong."
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
I get a full neurological test every day. They're with me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been at Walter Reed for my physicals. Yes. The answer is
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
no one said I had to. No one said, they said I'm good.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right.
That's why people are worried. You don't seem like you should be in that position.
And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, well, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing.
It sounds like he, near the beginning here when he was answering that question, it sounds like he forgot Keir Starmer's name. Now, again, I don't know if that's the case, but Why don't you just say Keir Starmer, since he is the prime minister in the UK now?
With regard to, in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick, I'm taking on Putin. I mean, every day, there's no day I go through that are not those decisions I have to make every single day.
And you have been doing that, and the American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking you, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign. It's over 125 days.
So
I'll
the
make
answer,
a decision.
the right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that right
No,
now.
I've already done it.
I mean, what is there to say here? Anyone confident in their own abilities would, of course, take the test. Like, yeah, I feel great. I'm doing great. Of course, test me. He knows he would fail those tests, or he's at least worried how he'd perform in them. This is not reassuring in any way at all. Now, Julian Castro, Democrat, came out to discuss this interview. And again, it's refreshing to hear reality come out of the mouths of these sitting Democrats.
Well, I think it's fair to say, Ali, that he was certainly steadier in this interview than we saw him in the debate, and even more so, I think, at the rally in the afternoon before he gave this interview today. At the same time, the overwhelming impression that I got from this is that you have a president that's basically in denial. Denial about the decline that people can clearly see. They asked him, well, have you declined in the last 3.5 years since you became president? And he seems to suggest that he hasn't. Denial about the polling, about how far behind, especially as George Stephanopoulos pointed out, in these battleground states, how far behind he is. Denial about the drumbeat of support for asking him to step aside. Now, 4 congressional representatives and Senator Warner as well. He seemed to dismiss that and said, only if the Lord Almighty comes down will I, would I step aside. And then maybe most importantly, and I think the most chilling, when Stephanopoulos asked him, well, what if you lose to Donald Trump? Then how are you going to feel? And President Biden said, well, as long as I gave it my all, that basically that he would feel okay. That's not good enough for the American people. That's not good enough with the stakes of Donald Trump winning. What people want is to have confidence that whoever Democrats put up can win this election. So I think he did better tonight, but I think he's got a long way to go to show folks, to give people confidence that he can actually beat Donald Trump.
Yeah, that answer really did get a reaction from a lot of people for good reason. So worth noting here, the Washington Post reports Biden has slowed considerably over the last several months, according to 21 people, many of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity, and that during the G7 summit last month, several European leaders came away stunned at how much older the president seemed from when they had last interacted with him. And that, quote, while Biden appeared capable of carrying out his duties today, they were concerned about how he would be able to serve another 4-year term. Seeing this, hearing about this, it's not surprising. We see Joe Biden. We see him in front of cameras. We can only imagine what he's like behind cameras, behind closed doors, with other world leaders. Like it's not like he's all of a sudden going to, be any better when the cameras are turned off. If anything, he's like any politician, he's going to try to put it on for the cameras. But, these other people in high positions are seeing it. It's so unfortunate that this has come out so late. This is the discussion that should have happened before the primary. This is the discussion that a lot of people were trying to have before the primary, yet they were being shut down. And now, so close to the election, it's a race to try and stop Trump from winning the election here. Last point, I saw this. This is a great point here from 50 Shades of Way. Even at his peak, he wasn't considered a guy who could win a presidential election. It wasn't until the U.S. was in a state of extreme chaos and vulnerability that he could be propagandized as a viable presidential candidate. His opportunistic at the most to gain from Trump and COVID. This is so very true. Biden ran for president many times, lost every time. The difference with Trump and COVID is that this was a very unique situation that the country was in, where there was this desire to have somebody who felt comfortable and safe as a way to as a person to go to when Trump was just a disaster. That was the only condition that Biden has proven he is able to win. And looking back, I think a lot of people, if they were up against Trump in 2020, of course they'd have to win the primary, but I think a lot of people could have won that election. They just have to get through the primary. But that was the only condition that where Biden was able to win this election or win an election. It's not the same now. This year is, there are many of the same problems from 2020, but not quite in the same way. And the feeling isn't quite the same. The real issue now is, can Biden bring out enough people to vote for him? And based on all the polling, there is a massive depression in the Democratic vote, in the young vote, especially. The coalition that got him to win in 2020 simply isn't there anymore. The only way to change that is to swap out the candidate. So this pressure is going to continue, but unless they pull, a 25th Amendment on him, it's going to be very hard for the party to actually remove him from the candidacy. But we're going to have to see how this all plays out.